Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Now, in the world today of 2012, we are very much on the tipping point. Mankind is being bombarded and is under attack from so many different directions now, and in so many subtle ways, that it's very difficult for people caught up in the matrix, people who are running around on the treadmill and trying to keep their head above the rigors of everyday life. It's very difficult for these people to notice the bombardment and the attack that they are being subject to, because the attack is coming through the social systems, through the financial systems, through the legal systems. It's happening electromagnetically. It's the mental attack, the attack against people's minds that they're subject to via the education system and the media. And then we've got the biological attack they're under from the chemtrails and from the food that they eat and the genetically modified food that's being forced on them by companies such as Monsanto. And it really is so incredibly multifaceted, folks, that it is virtually incomprehensible to most people that this is the reality in which they are living. And yet it is, folks, and it can be clearly seen that it is, because all the evidence to support this observation is right there before your eyes if you simply step back and look at the world on a global stage. I've often said, if people could step back and put themselves in space above the Earth and just look at the Earth and look at what's going on, look at how much stuff is being sprayed in the skies, look at the effect the genetic modification of the food chain is having upon the planet. Look into concepts such as the silent forest. And there are many people that do notice it. Recently we saw Hungary burn every Monsanto corn crop in the country and tell Monsanto to get out of their country. They burn over 1,000 acres of GM corn. So it shows that some governments are aware of the damage that this genetic modification of our environment is doing, and they're attempting to do what they can to stand up against it. And that's a very good thing. So it isn't all the countries that are asleep, and it isn't all the people that are asleep. But you notice that events such as this are never reported by the mainstream media. You wouldn't know about Hungary burning 1,000 acres of GM corn if you didn't get it from an online news reporting service. There's no way you're going to see it on Channel 7 or on Fox or on CNN, because that is not the job of the mainstream media. The job of the mainstream media is not to report the news, but rather to mould public opinion with a selective distribution of very scripted information. And then you can couple this with the fact that people are always kept on the treadmill and kept so that they're very, very busy in the rigors of everyday life, so that they never really have time to investigate many of these things for themselves. And suddenly you get the society that we have today, where most people, even though they work very hard, feel that they are informed because they watch what is reported to them by the television. They get their other information from cop shows and television shows and reality TV shows, which train them not in how to think, but in what to think. And so for many people, this is reality. Most people simply never realize just how controlled the environment in which they live is. The social environment, the intellectual environment, the informational environment. And in fact, for a very large number of people on this planet, everything they know about reality and everything that they understand about events that happen on a global stage is that which is presented to them by their television. And again, folks, even being aware of this is half the battle. And it's the same with any problem, folks. You have to be aware of how it works in order to ever find remedy. Now, on many of the shows that I've done over the years, I've often talked about energy, and I've often made references to the energetic nature of the universe, the energetic nature of reality. And I've done this to help people break down the fear that they may have in their life, which I believe is what prevents most people from standing up against this system. The fear of everything, folks, the fear of peer group pressure, the fear of what people may think about you, the fear of the system itself, the fear of the police, the fear of the authorities, the fear of the legal system. And I believe personally that all of these individual fears can all be overcome by simply overcoming the fear that we have of ourselves and the fear that we have of the people around us, the people that we associate with in our everyday lives. Because there is always an underlying fear with these people. It's usually a fear of your own inadequacy or a fear of ever being yourself in front of these people. And this goes with ego and stuff as well, folks. I mean, a lot of ego is based in fear. Most people who have to inflate their ego in order to be around others are simply in fear of their own inadequacies. They're in fear of ever facing what they believe to be inadequate about themselves. And so they need to inflate their ego because they believe that it's beneficial to present an inflated view of themselves to the world. See, again, folks, this all comes down to insecurity. It all comes down to fear. And I believe that it is this fear which prevents people from treating those around them as themselves. And I firmly believe that that is the key to the whole thing. Once we can live our lives in Lakesh and treat everybody as ourselves, then the whole world changes. But it seems to be a very difficult thing for people to do. In all its simplicity, it seems to be very difficult. Many people go through their lives searching for something. They know that there's something more to reality than what they're experiencing. Quite often they look for this missing part of themselves in someone else. They search for a partner. Perhaps this partner measures up to what they would like to see in themselves, or perhaps they don't. But the point is that they look for this missing part of themselves, and they look for value and meaning from reality in someone else or in some other action. Even perhaps they might lock themselves away and become a monk, or become a traveling Good Samaritan, or a new Mother Teresa, or whatever, and totally dedicate themselves to others in order to find this meaning. But it's always something that is external to themselves. Very few people can find that meaning within themselves and find that wholeness that exists within them, and which they've been kept from seeing, they've been prevented from seeing, they've been steered away from this wholeness and this connection that they have to the world around them by everything within our society. All the social systems, the education systems, the religious systems most especially, always teach people to look for salvation in something external to themselves. And yet I believe that if people would simply look within and see the connection that they have to others, then they would find that the answer they've been seeking has been right there in their heart for their whole lives. They've just never looked in there to see it. And this is why I believe an understanding of energy is so important, folks, because when you can see that spark of life that exists within yourself is the same as the spark of life, the essence that exists in the person next to you and exists in all people. When you can see this and you can begin to interact with people and with reality around you on that level, then the whole world changes. It just serves to break down the barriers, the walls. They just crumble, they fall to the ground. And then you apply it to reality around you, and you look around and you begin to question things. And it's like I said earlier in the first half of this show, the reason this oppressive authoritarian regime holds sway over us so strongly is because people have been trained not to question things. No one ever questions the status quo. No one ever questions why they have to treat a living human being as something that is more expendable than the system. And they have to discard humanity along the way in order to support the system that was created to service humanity. People just do these things without question because it says on a piece of paper some way that that is the sociopathic manner in which they are required to act, according to the parameters that have been granted to them by the system that they serve. But it's in questioning reality, and it's in questioning the system that remedy lies. This is the true beginning, folks. This is the beginning. This is the essence of freedom, is to question your captivity. And that's why change will only ever be effected at a grassroots level. I mean, we can't go and have a big movement, big mass movement and protest in the street and demand someone else change things. We have to make the change within ourselves. We have to start questioning the authority within our communities and start questioning why those around us should be forced to suffer at the hands of this system. When we see people suffering, we need to support them. We need to stand up with them against the system. And we need to do this by simply asking questions and causing those figures of authority that are carrying out this sociopathic legislation and enforcing it upon the people. We need to cause these people to start questioning their actions as well. Because the rights of the peoples and the basic needs of the peoples need to be protected at any cost. And this should be the most treasured and the most important thing that we hold within our hearts and within this system. And if the system itself chooses to do the opposite, then we need to question it. I mean, I don't know why people can't just view the world this way. It makes perfect sense to me. It doesn't make any sense at all to allow any human being to suffer in order to support a fictional system. To me, it's not even a debatable point. I mean, if the system is going to operate in a way that hurts the people, then of course that part of the system needs to be discarded. And you can't say, well, look, if we do that, then we've got no law and we've got chaos. I mean, it's ridiculous, folks, because if the system chooses to discard humanity along the way, then we've got no law and chaos now, and we need to fix it. It isn't a matter of maintaining the status quo. It's a matter of creating a system that works for everybody. Of course, the first thing we need to do is break down the corporate structure completely. We don't need any corporations on this planet. We don't need anything to be run the way it is. But again, the first step is to become aware of this, and I suppose the second step is to educate those around you so that they too become aware of it, so that we can at last have an empowered community. And frankly, folks, I think we're running out of time in which to do this. So the question really is, what are you doing out there? What are you doing to get the message out to people? I've actually spent the last week burning DVDs of this Schapelle Corby disc, and we're having a huge giveaway this week where we're going to distribute them through the entire town, absolutely saturate the entire area. And that's a start, that's one thing. I've been doing the usual handing out of pamphlets and flyers and DVDs in most places that I go. But folks, really the most important thing is, as I've said, it's the grassroots action. You've got to break down these barriers in your community. And folks, look, really, we're being given all of the tools and opportunities we need to do this with things such as fracking, coal seam gas mining. Here in Australia, like I said, we've got the Northern Territory being turned into a nuclear waste dump amid massive protests from people. It would seem that nobody in Australia wants this nuclear waste dump to go ahead, and yet the government is going to do it anyway. And this is an enormous opportunity for the people to see how corrupt the government is and how little they actually care about the wishes or the will of the people of their country. And you can see this in America with the legislation that Obama brings in. You can see it in England with the legislation that's brought in. You can see it in Canada. You can see it in all Western countries, folks. Our governments are constantly doing things that we do not want them to do. And they are quite literally a handful of people that are employed to act on our behalf and do things that we do want them to do.